I'm going to start light. How many shitty books do you get?
A lot. Less than I used to, though. Less than I used to.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. I don't get as obviously as many as you, but I'm just like, dude, I'm not going to like promote this thing. This thing is like dog shit.
Well, in all seriousness, I mean, all right, so the story of how I started promoting books happened really naturally. One day around like 10K, the first author said, "How much do you charge for a review?" Before that, it was like, "Can I send you a copy of the book?" Yeah, of course. I get free books.
Right.
And then, "How much do you charge for a review?" Okay, I don't know, like $30, $40, whatever. And I started just accepting every book. And eventually, and I really don't remember the name of the book, but eventually there was one book that had like misspellings in the subtitle and it was just not formatted correctly. And that was the first time that I was like, all right, I need to think about these books before I just accept money for them. And I actually returned the money. And I said, I can't, hey, for whatever reason, like I'm overworked, I just can't promote the book, something like that.
Yeah.
And now there's like a filtering mechanism. So before I accept money for a book, I go through Amazon. Is the author credible? Did they get it published? Did it go through a real editing process? And I always look for something that I can talk about. So you'll notice sometimes that in a book review, I won't say this book was amazing. I'll just say something that I thought was really interesting in this book was XYZ.
Yeah. There's always something. You can find one point no matter what.
Exactly. I'm always like mining for one golden nugget, but yeah, I eliminate most of the bad books before they get there.
Nice. How'd you sleep last night?
I slept well. It was my mom's birthday, so a few glasses of wine.
Okay.
And yeah, I got to bed a little late, woke up a little late. So
how was your score?
My aura score?
Yeah.
It was actually a 73, but that's because I got so much sleep. I had 29. Right. Yeah, last night I had 20 REM, 29 deep. So it's good, but that's just because of the volume of sleep. The quality wasn't that good.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I'm not a deep sleeper for some reason.
Dude, last night or 2 nights ago, 44% deep sleep.
Dude, that's insane.
It's like actually off the charts.
Right. You must just get up and feel like the man. You're like, damn, let's go.
I'm not kidding. So I talked to Owen from Unleash the Knowledge about this because his deep sleep is like, wow, I'm going to put him out there. It's like 6, 7, 8%. And we went really deep into the sleep stuff. And I'm not kidding. I take like probably 10 different sleep supplements. They're not sleep supplements that make you fall asleep. They're not sleeping pills. They're just like organic supplements that also aid in your ability to sleep. And so he just started taking a bunch of stuff.
Nice. Well, come on, give me the list.
Yeah, I could text you the list after. At one point, I made an online spreadsheet that broke down everything I was taking, as well as like the link to Amazon. And then I would divide it by how many servings it was. So I would get like the per night, that one's 8 cents per night. This one's 4 cents per night. That one's 12 cents per night. And it was intense. So I knew how much like I was spending on supplements because it's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, I feel amazing. So,
right. It's like, all right, it costs $7 to go to bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I notice if I work out too late in the day, I get real shitty sleep. I seem to get more deep sleep, but like overall I have like 5.5 hours or 6 hours that I was asleep. And then I feel okay until about like 1 p.m. Then I'm like, man, I feel like dog shit.
Dude, major rules are number 1, no caffeine after 2 p.m. That's a major one because caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours, depending on your metabolism. And so if you drink a cup of coffee at 4 or 5 p.m., half of that's still in your body while you're trying to go to sleep. And then the other major rule is no food after. For me, it's no food after dinner. So whenever dinner is, I try not to have any food after that, because if you're trying to digest while you're trying to fall asleep, your body's in a confused state. So those two, plus, no heavy workouts or anything at night for sure.
Yeah. Oh man, I drink caffeine until like 5 p.m.
I mean,
6
sometimes
p.m.
I do too. Sometimes I do too, but it's really bad for your sleep.
Yeah.
So that's a good life hack for you. I've read so many books on sleep at this point.
Yeah, my brother's like, stop fucking drinking coffee and you won't have a problem sleeping.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Right. Let's see. So with this whole empire you're building, I've seen a lot of pivots. I've seen a lot of grit, you know. At some point, it's like, dang, do the pivots get old? Or is it just, all the pivots are coming throughout this process? And it's kind of, because, you had the app and it was like, let's go, and it was like, dang, product market fit is not taking off how you thought it would. And it's just all the time and energy, just like getting kicked in the nuts over and over. And you're just like, kick me again. Let's go.
No, I mean, it's a good question. BookThinkers has pivoted its purpose more times than I would have wanted for sure. But that's the name of the game. I mean, when you read a book like E-Myth Revisited and Gerber says 95% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years, you go, yeah, but I'm the 1 in 20. And then you have to pivot, and it kind of feels like, you failed that business and you're starting a new one. And that has happened a lot of times. I've tried to put out 2 mobile applications. We've tried e-commerce. We've tried mastermind groups. We've tried selling publishers on a big book project. We've tried some other stuff behind the scenes. I've had business partners that haven't worked out. I mean, Ryan is sort of a passive investor in BookThinkers now. He doesn't have an active role. So there have been a lot of ups and downs and lefts and rights and pivots and different focuses. But to me, it's almost like every time I do that, I'm getting a little bit closer. So like BookThinkers as a business did over 6 figures in author promotions last year.
Yeah.
And that to me is the only thing that's worked out. Even if it's not the primary focus, it's like authors, they need exposure. And one picture post on BookThinkers can do anywhere between 15 to 50,000, 100,000 views or, impressions or whatever. So I'm always pivoting and trying different things, but that's like the foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. So Nick, the bookman, I like it. Does you ever feel like because it's working so well with that one particular channel that you kind of pigeonholed?
Sometimes, and I'll tell you what, sometimes I get reminded that I don't own Instagram, so they could turn it off anytime.
Dude, especially when you're a guy like me, you just start going off and then I'm like, oh, I have 3 strikes and my shit's not literally my post is reaching like 12 people. I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, not that I have a huge following or anything, but like it should be more than 12. I should have more than 50 story views.
I mean, I guess Instagram's coming out with this new feed option where, I've actually seen it on my personal Instagram. So they released it on my personal at one point, but where you can filter your feed and you can go back to chronological order. So you'll get more views. Yeah. I mean, it's terrifying. Listen to this. Last year, probably about 1 year ago, I think it was January last year, I tried downloading some third-party app that would allow you to remove ghost followers. Like it was an automated program that you could pay for. Yeah. And they had tons of reviews and they were all 5 stars. And I was like, this is great. So I downloaded the app and it said something like out of the 130,000 followers, like 30,000 of them were inactive, had not interacted with anything on my page in the last 6 months or something. So I was like, remove all of them. Right. And it started chugging and then boom, locked out of Instagram. Right. I go to log back in. I go to log back in and it says that my email has changed. And literally it changed to something like at hotmail.com. And I was like, gotcha, I'm out. So I'm submitting support requests. I'm like, this is, and I mean, last year I didn't anticipate doing so much in terms of like book promos. But I'm like, this is a real business that just died because Instagram blocked the account. Instantly. That's real. Instantly, it's gone. Yeah. And I had like author promos to execute against, like outstanding tasks and stuff. I'm like, it's gone. And so I blacked out for a day or two, but whatever. I was like blasting Instagram with support requests and I got it back. But yeah, that's how easily this business could die. So yeah, I do want
Yeah.
a community outside of Instagram. I do
Mhm.
want a business that's not related to Instagram, but
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. It's wild. It's hard to like, because Instagram doesn't want you transferring your reach over to TikTok or, you know, so it's like,
Yeah.
how do you try to get some traction on a different platform? It's just like crickets because you're used to a certain amount of engagement. And then you try like, I'm going to build my Twitter up. You're like, fuck, this is hard.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, even my podcast, like I've interviewed so many amazing authors and none of it's translated. You'd be
Mhm.
shocked at how low the view counts are on those episodes.
Hey, I listen to 'em.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I mean, you get an A-lister like a Robert Greene or a Ryan Holiday, and they do like 1,000 downloads. But if
Yeah,
you
you're
post
like,
a picture of their book, it reaches like 75,000 people. So it's like
right,
the energy just kind of dies out on the other platforms.
right. So, dude, tell me about the how stressed were you when you're like, all my revenue just disappeared.
Yeah, you know what? I think the
Did you
major
swear?
compliment, probably, but I think the major compliment from like Rachel maybe
Yeah.
was, wow, you're stoic about this. And I'm like,
It's
this
working.
philosophy actually works. Yeah. And there have been
Yeah.
a couple major things that have happened where other people have been like, hey, you're kind of handling this well. I'm like, well, I can't change it. So let's figure out how to manage it moving forward, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. What about the old Nick?
Uh, that guy, I don't know what
Yeah.
he would have done. Thrown his laptop out of the window or something.
Yeah. Dude, isn't it growth is weird? Like personality change. It's like difficult because it's you always fall back to your default until you get to a new default, you know?
Yeah.
Um, it's something that I struggle with because I'm just like, dude, I hate not being myself. So just it gets to a point, you've seen how many pivots I've done. I've like tried to be nice. And then something I see a headline on a news that I'm not supposed to be watching in passing, like on a bus stop or some shit, or in the hallway. I'm just like, all right, I'm going on Instagram. I'm like, no, Mike, don't do it. Don't do it, Mike. Don't
I
do it.
like
That's
how you
not
even tell your audience, I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it now. I think you're probably the most entertaining person to watch on all of my Instagram stories, just so you know. So
I think
there are people that enjoy it.
it's just it's unpredictable. And sometimes I say what other people are just thinking.
Well, no, you do. And I'm a hypocritical example of that because if you go back to me in like 2015, 2016, I was ultra conservative
Mm,
and I was not afraid to tell everybody that. But I mean, we've talked about it before. I sort
mhm,
of made the decision to grow the platform and mature the business without like bringing in politics or social issues. And that actually made me a lot less like political or I guess upset by those headlines,
yeah,
because I like force myself not to care about them.
mhm.
I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. And then I think like, there's a certain type of person that 25-year-old Mike is who I'm looking for. Like basically the kid that has a desire to change and do better with his life, but he just hasn't got it together yet. And I know I'm not gonna be able to reach that kid by just being like straight laced, like normal,
Hmm.
motivational type guy. I have to be a little bit in that kid's face.
Yeah, no, it's a
Um,
good point. Like that's your target.
mhm. And then, but at the same time, at that point in my life, I would have been like, fuck this guy. He has that opinion. Cause I was like so far left. I just wanted everything to be free. I wanted everything like nothing was my fault ever. Like, poor me, poor me. This guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So I wouldn't have been attracted to that really either. So I'm just like, I might be alienating the very people that I want to reach. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's an impossibly tough thing to tackle, but I don't know. I'd say you're doing it pretty well. Like you've got raving fans for sure. You've got people that care about every single time you post. And
right.
that's what matters. And maybe they're not who you thought your target following was going to be,
Right.
but
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, hmm, it's like a mom from the West Coast that hasn't said a word to me, but then she writes me a big email about how she loves everything and yada yada yada, you know. So it's like, it's weird. I'm
Yeah.
sure you get that too. Dude, what's up with India just dominating the book space? They're just like, do Americans not read anymore, or what's the deal? Because they're just like churning out people that just love personal development.
Yeah, I've got so many mixed and probably unpopular opinions about it. Like, not on one side of the spectrum, India's middle class, who all speaks English, is larger than our entire population
Right.
in the US. So,
Yeah.
of course, we're going to have a lot of Indian followers, and they're probably the second biggest consumer. I've heard that so many times, the second biggest consumer of American personal development books. So, yeah, they're going to be there. But for me and for like the business I'm trying to run, it's not attractive to screenshot my Instagram demographics and for there to be such a large Indian following, because the Indian population doesn't spend as much per person on books as a US following does. So yeah, it's such a weird thing. Like, I love India and I can't wait to visit and travel India, but I don't want my Instagram following to be mostly Indian followers.
Right. Yes. Yeah, it's a weird. I have probably 30% India, 30% America, or maybe 37% America. And then I have like 1% England and Australia combined, basically, you know, like all the English speaking countries across the pond. But I've had, there's a lot, here's the problem, right? Is there's great people everywhere. Like, I've met
Yeah,
so
no,
many
I mean, I
awesome
agree.
people from every culture that I've come across, right? I've also met assholes and crazy people in every culture. So it's just like, individual. Treat people like an individual, judge them by their character, you know, MLK.
And
And
listen, I've met people while traveling from BookThinkers
yeah.
in different countries. Like, I've met people in Peru, I've met people in Colombia, I met people in Aruba, met people in so many different places so far while traveling because of BookThinkers. And that's like the coolest thing ever, is to have somebody say, hey, I jumped on a train for an hour to come here to get a drink at this bar with you. It's like, that's cool,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
wild. Yeah.
and they've got such a different perspective of you because they've only seen you through social media. So to them, it's a bigger highlight than it, and then for me, I'm like, wow, this local Peruvian person wants to hang out with me from this other side of the planet and they think I'm cool, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. No, that's wild. Even me, I've met like, probably, there was one point where I met like 7, 8 people at one time from that I met on Instagram. We met in Florida, and it was just like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the biggest compliment I got was like, wow, Mike, you're exactly the same guy. I'm like, there we go. Integrity, right? Trying
Yeah.
to just be myself. And it's hard because like I've struggled with insecurity and like things throughout my life. And then sometimes I'll try to overcompensate for that, and I'll swing all the way to the other side, like, fuck you, here I am, you know, like, take it or leave it, bitch, blah, 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 you know. But that's not really me either, because I care a little bit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I don't want people to think I'm an asshole unless I am being an asshole, like authentically being a dickhead, you know, for a reason.
No, I think your brand, like, my perspective on it is that if Instagram wasn't so if Instagram didn't care so much about social issues and politics, I think you'd have a bigger following. Like, I think the stuff that you talk about has more viral potential than the stuff I talk about, but it's not what Instagram wants you to feed it because I don't know, they've got their own social agenda.
Right. I got a flag because Instagram flagged my account and like gave me a warning. If you go under account status, whatever, it shows you all your pink slips. I
I
got one
should
for
look and see if I have any.
I got one because I commented on BookThinkers, and
Oh yeah, I remember this.
someone reported it as bullying. I said, and it was like literally because we have rapport, you know. I was like, I know you try to act civilized, but you're just an animal or something like that. And they're like, bully. I'm like,
somebody flags it, you get caught as a
right,
bully.
like, God damn.
It says you haven't posted anything that is affecting your account status.
Hey, at least they're telling you how it is. So do you know anybody at Instagram I can get these flags off my account? Because I'm really getting sick of reaching 75 people.
If I knew people on Instagram, I'd be verified. So I don't know anybody on Instagram.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I've been rejected for 3 years straight every month.
Right. Oh, hey, you're persistent, dude.
I am. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Tell me about don't be a punk bitch. Tell me the last time you cried.
Dude, it's been a long time. I'm not being a punk. I just it's not part of my persona. It's last time.
We'll go with this. What makes you cry?
That's like one of those really weird subjects in my life, man. Like really nothing. Not death, not probably the closest thing is like military homecoming or like dog related stuff.
Yeah.
You know, definitely feel that. But it's strange because I'm in a relationship with Rachel and she cries during everything or anything.
My wife's the same way.
So I'll tell you a funny story. Maybe she can hear me or 1 or 2 rooms over. She'll burst in and be like, come on, don't tell these stories. But I mean, like one time we were on a plane and I was reading and she was watching some movie about like a cartoon snowman or I mean, Yeti or something. And she's bawling her eyes out to the point that like, she's like snotting and like making noises and everybody's like, is this woman okay back there? You know, like that's how much she cries all the time during anything. Like we're watching this show right now called Afterlife. And there's a scene that I just don't even understand how anybody could possibly want to cry. It doesn't make any sense to me. And she's crying. So like that's been a problem for me for a long time. And I think that I was like that as a kid too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't cry, oddly enough. I'm very emotional overall. I don't cry for bad things for some reason, probably because I've been through the shitstorm of life. Like I know bad things are coming and they're always going to be coming. Like all you can do is like stand up straight with your shoulders back and just take that shit on, you know? But like if something good happens, you know, like watching Rocky and he's just like unwilling to give up. I'm just like, fuck yeah. You go, man. Or like you know, like I might cry watching one of Brady's comebacks, you know, just like all the odds in the world were stacked against you. But somehow,
that stuff makes me feel a type of way too. Now, I don't think that I've cried for any of those things, but like it makes me feel some type of way. Like I definitely get emotional as well. I will tell you that when you said, when was the last time, I was trying to think of something more recent, but something that did stick out in my head was when I was in college, I ran a house painting business. Yeah. And I hired like all my friends and that was my first business experience. And there was one house that we did. It was a huge project, like an $8,000 project. And I remember I went to go collect a check and the house owner showed me like all this paint all over the stones that he ordered for his walkway. And for whatever reason, maybe it was stain and we couldn't get it out and we power washed it. We couldn't get it out. My guys tried not to tell me about it. And he's like, I'm going to fight this. I'm not going to pay it. I'm going to dispute it. And here I am. I'm like 19 or 20. Right.
Not even assertive.
I went home and cried. Yeah. I went home and cried because I was like, the pressure of me going from like awkward, insecure to getting like berated by the house owner and thinking I'm going to lose like $8,000 and I don't even have any money. Right. To like, how do I manage all of this complexity? And my brain like exploded. I remember going home and crying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all the pressure. Plus your buddies are dependent on you. Yeah. You know, you're like probably like leading into this, like, yeah, I'm going to be this like great entrepreneur. And then you're like, you're getting sued, bitch.
Yeah. And I melted under the pressure. I called my boss at the time on my car ride home. Yeah. And I remember like, you know, like breathing kind of heavy. And then I got home and I took a shower and I cried.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So now I got an answer.
You're human.
Yes,
There
for
it is.
sure.
I thought you were a freaking robot.
Less human today than I was back then, but
Right. Yeah. Um, hmm. So you don't get emotional very often anymore. Is it just like the initial cue or like the trigger? You're like, all right, I should be emotional, but you just
I'm way more
separate
I'm way
yourself from
more
it. Or?
logical now. I'll tell you the biggest change for me. So most of my emotional outbursts used to be really negative. Yeah,
Right.
they weren't crying, they were like anger
Yeah.
related. And so most of the work that I've done to improve my emotional response to things hasn't been to eliminate like crying. It's been to eliminate an angry outburst. And so I had one like 2 weeks ago with Rachel when we were in the car. And it was the
Yeah.
first like really bad negative emotional outburst I've had, like
Hmm.
raising my voice wise in a long
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
it shows the progress that I've made because we were with one of my friends, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, who was like, this kid used to go out every weekend looking for a fight, bump into him at a club or a bar, like he's getting in your face, trying to get you to fight him. And like
Yeah.
I had definitely had anger related issues when I was younger. And so the stoic version of me, the biggest change that happened was I started meditating and
Mm.
I talk about it like this. I got more time between the input to my brain and my
Right.
reaction. And that
Yeah.
time got layered with logic. It was like, what's the most logical response to this? And it sounds like less human, but I'll tell you what, it's a lot better when you don't have to fight somebody for
Right.
bumping into you, or you
For
don't
no
have
reason.
to,
Yeah.
or like I was probably bumping into them saying, what are you
Right.
bumping into me for? You know, like it was that bad for a little while.
Right. Right. Dude, it would have been bad if you and I met in those circumstances.
Probably.
Because I was that same way. I'm like, God, I hope someone bumps into me right now.
Me too. And thankfully I'm like not like that because it translated to, less often, but it translated to like relationships and friendships and
Mhm.
anything could set me off at certain points. And then people are trying to save you, like, hey Mike, calm down buddy, or hey
Right.
Nick, calm
Right.
down buddy. And you're like now and you're in your friend's face, like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
My best friend, he has went way off the deep end, so we're not close anymore. But I would still consider him a best friend. He got
He's
into
on a
drugs.
podcast right now going, my old best friend Mike went way off the deep end. And
Right. Yeah. No, we got in a fight. And I broke his eye socket in his nose. And I'm like, and then I picked him up and drove him to the hospital and spent the night with him in the ER. Like,
I have a very similar story. Yeah, I was working with a guy and we got in a fight at a sales conference. We were on the
yeah.
same team. And we both got stitches together that night.
Yeah.
He got
Wild.
stitches over his eye. I got stitches
Okay.
on my nose.
Yeah, my eyebrows barely even grow anymore. I never had like thick eyebrows or anything, but they're just like scars everywhere from like not being able to duck quick enough. I'm like, fuck, you just hit me. Yeah, one time I got in a fight at this. So I was like not in college anymore, but I went to the frat row in Minneapolis,
Mhm.
and I tried to get in this house where all the girls are, because but I didn't have any girls with me, and that's like your ticket to get in. It's like you got to have more girls than you have guys. So I show up with 2 guys and 1 girl or something like that, and he wouldn't let me in, even though my buddies were in there, you know.
Mhm.
And then I don't know, we started going back and forth. I'm like, fuck this place, blah 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 blah. And I go to take a leak, and I'm like pissing on his fence, and he has like a retaining wall, kind of. So
Mhm.
his basically his waist is like my face level, and he kicks me in the kicks me in the face like my head's a kickball.
Oh geez.
So luckily he missed mostly and just nicked me, but I fell back and I had like all my bottles of liquor in my backpack, and they broke. I'm like, oh, fuck this. I took the backpack off and I climbed the fence. I was fighting everybody.
I remember
It was
so I
great.
went to UNH and there was a frat row. And I remember when I was a freshman, like trying to go into one of those frats, and them like telling the group of guys in front of us, like, oh, you have two guys in your group, you two need to wrestle. The one that wins gets to go in, the one that doesn't has to leave. And these are friends, and they started
Right.
fighting each other. And I'm like, this life is not for me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the only frat experience I had. I actually got in like 3 fights that night. It was kind of wild. I did get I had to go to the emergency room just for my hand because I busted my hand wide open. So I hit this guy and my hand just like exploded.
Oh,
My
geez.
knuckles were showing. And then like you know how like the record scratch and the party stops? Because when I hit the kid, even though my hand exploded, his face exploded too. So it's like, who hit Pee Wee? Whatever.
You're
And
like,
someone's
not
like,
me.
right. And then someone's like, he did. And it was like me and a guy and my friend Katie. I'm like, oh fuck. And I'm like, let's go. I'm ready to like take on like 30 guys. And then my buddy's like, hey, Mike, stop and look. And I was like, okay, you're right. We should run.
Turn and sprint.
Right. I take off running. And by the time I get to the car, I'm just covered in blood because my hand is just spraying. And they almost caught me actually because I didn't run right away and I was wearing like some kind of dress shoes or some shit. I don't know. And there's a little water on the grass. And somehow they're right as they're about to catch me, I slipped by accident and went right underneath the fence, like instantly, and popped up and just.
Some local sheriff in like a Minneapolis college town is watching this right now, and he's like going through the open cases, and he's like, I found him. I found him.
Yeah. And it was actually in the paper because the guy I hit, I didn't know it, but he was a wide receiver for the U at the time.
Oh,
Like,
geez.
so it's like guy in red hoodie, suspect, blah, 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 blah. I'm like,
Don't know that guy.
right. I lived like a half hour away at that point though. So I was like, all right, I'm not in the cities every day. So whatever. But yeah, I've grown. Now the only reason I would fight is like if someone was like super disrespectful to my wife or if I had to protect friends or family. Like besides that, there's been times where I'm like, God, playing basketball. Sometimes it gets pretty heated, you know?
Yeah.
And I just get annoyed when people are talking shit because I talk shit back, you know, just like, and if they're lazy, they only play offense and then they're still talking shit. That really pisses me off for some reason because they're like cherry pickers, you know?
Yeah.
And they're just talking shit the whole time. And they're like, oh, gotcha. I'm like, bitch, you were on the other side of the court as I was actually attempting to do something. And you get a cheap ass bomb, you know, and you're standing under the bucket because you're too lazy to come to the other side of the court. It's just like,
You'd hate playing with me because that's the best aspect of my game is well, not cherry picking, but fast breaks, because I'll take like if I'm covering somebody who didn't shoot the ball and is hanging around the 3-point, like at the top of the three, and he's looking to see, you know, just like kind of lazily standing at the top of the arc, looking to see if the ball goes in or not, I'm taking off. Because I'm like, if the ball doesn't go in, I'm going to be by myself.
Right.
And so that's like the best aspect of my game is the fast breaks.
Anticipation. That's different though. That's a little different. Yeah. That's like
it is different.
Using your brain, not because you're lazy.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to play basketball sometimes. We have so many physical things to do.
Yeah, I know. And I've been screwed up ever since last year. So I had my ACL repaired and all this stuff. Yeah. And so then I got back into it. I'm like training. I'm like warmed up. At least I thought I was warmed up really good. Haven't done a sprint in a year. I'm like, all right, time to open it up. Let's go. Knock the carbon off these old gaskets, you know? So I'm like, I take off 80%. I'm like, okay, it felt good. Went to 90, felt good. Went to 100, my shit snapped up everywhere. My hamstring, my hip flexor, and then I from college football, I had this kind of like a sports hernia, you know, where your abs go to your pelvis.
Mm-hmm.
One of those I tore where the ligament or the tendon goes in and attaches to the pelvis bone. So I ripped it off a little bit and then I re-hurt that. And those things, they take forever to heal because you use your pelvis every time you take a step.
Yeah.
So it's just like I would not be able to compete right now, which sucks because my last post on Instagram was just like, God, I love. There's nothing better than like competition when there's nothing, everything in the world just fades away. You're just trying to beat this guy. That's meditation.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, it's still a form of meditation. Definitely.
Yeah. Do you still play sports?
Yeah, I got accused of cherry picking on Thursday night in a
Ah.
basketball game because I have a younger brother. His name's Christian, and well, I have 3 younger brothers, but this one in particular, he played on the high school basketball team. I never did. I wrestled instead of basketball, and so he's a much better basketball player than I am. But for whatever reason, the other night, I got the best of him. We were on opposite teams. It's not a pickup league because there aren't fixed teams, but it's like a pickup night, and we pick new teams every Thursday whenever I'm around the Boston area. And anyway, we always play each other, even though he's much better than me. But I got him. I had bested him that night, and he's like, "Well, I can't play offense and defense, and my team wasn't it, blah blah blah, and you're just taking off too much." And whatever. I scored more. I was happy.
Right. Exactly.
But so rec basketball, I really enjoy. And that's probably the only semi-organized thing that I've done. I mean, like I have a Thanksgiving football game with my buddies, but that's once a year. And that's really it. And then the gym.
Is there any new habits you're always adding new habits, but is there any habits that you're trying to add this year?
Physically, yeah, running. So
yeah.
I had a conversation with one of my accountability partners, and he was talking. So he had a brief stint in the NFL. He's a quarterback, but it was more like practice squad stuff. But that's kind of how I refer to him. I'm like, he came to me in one of our calls, and he's like, "Hey man, I've never had to run more than a couple miles in my life, just like because he's a quarterback. Why would you ever have to run distance? It's sprint, sprint, recover, whatever." So he said, "I've been watching guys like Jesse Itzler talk about the importance of like your VO2 max and your lung capacity and your resting heart rate as you get older. And I want to test myself. I want to run a half marathon in May and a full marathon later this year. You should do it too." And I'm like, "Nah, man, I've never run more than a couple miles in my life either. I don't want to do that at all." And he's like, "Come on, it would be fun." So I said, "Fine, I'll do a half marathon in May." And I'm not going to lie, I'm really enjoying the running. Like I'm applying the same kind of mechanics that I would any other habit to it. And I have a couple friends that were super competitive runners. I'm talking like 406 miles and stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I had a couple calls with them, just like I would about reading any other book. I've listened to a couple books on running, and like I am chugging along. So yeah, that's what I'm up to now is running. That's the physical thing.
Okay. Do you follow Cam Haynes?
No.
Dude.
I should.
He's the 50-year-old version of you.
All right, good.
Like, are you familiar with him?
I know the name, but and he's probably been interviewed on podcasts that I've listened to.
Yeah, he's been on Rogan and stuff like that. He runs a marathon a day.
I think I have heard of this guy.
Yeah, marathon a day. He's a bow hunter. He lifts weights, and I think he's your type of guy.
How do you spell Haynes?
I think it's like the underwear. Hanes, I think. And it might be Cameron.
Yeah, I'll have to find it.
Yeah. I'll send him to you. He's a beast.
Yeah, there's guys, I mean, you know who's somebody that I'm interviewing today actually that you'll think is kind of funny. You've probably seen it, is Dan Bilzerian.
Oh yeah.
And in his book, I read the whole thing, and he talks about like a lot of different athletic feats and stuff. And he went through SEAL training and Hell Week and all that kind of stuff multiple times. And, he talks about like aging as an athlete and all that kind of stuff. So I've been thinking about that. It's like, how do I want to look and feel when I'm older? And he talks a lot about steroids and stuff. And that's not my game. I don't think that I ever want to tamper with things like that, but I do apply a lot of like supplementation, and I pay attention to my body, because a lot of it ties to your brain too. So
right.
We'll see how I get as I get older, but I don't think I'll ever want to do anything crazy like that. But the reason I brought up the Dan stuff is because when I was reading the book, I was like, I could do this. I could do that. I could do this. He's talking about like impossible SEAL training related things, like, working out for 7 days in a row with no sleep and thousands of push-ups and millions of miles. I'm like, that's easy. That's easy. That's easy.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm like, I would get pushed out in week one or in like day one, probably.
Ding, ding.
Yeah.
Dude, Dan Brazil, or whatever his last name is.
Mhm.
Was that Brazilian?
Bilzerian.
Bilzerian. Yeah. Dude, people be hating on him.
Yes, they do.
And I'm like, this guy is just him. He's like so comfortable just being himself. That's what people wish they could do in the public eye. But they're afraid. Cancel.
It's one of the first lessons in his book is, I'm not writing this to impress you or to change your opinion of me. I'm just telling my story.
Right.
And that's another thing that he says is like a lot of the hate comes from insecurity. Why does my life affect you at all? I'm just doing what makes me happy. I've never been in jail. I've never done anything. Like I'm transparent. I tell the truth. I like what I like.
Yeah.
You don't have to like that. Don't follow me. And Goggins in the intro is like, he's probably the most followed person without people following him. People are always checking in, and
right.
He's like,
they don't follow him, but they look him up every couple of days just to talk shit.
Exactly. It's a weird life to have, but I wouldn't want it. But it's
right.
like, that amount of scrutiny is probably hard to deal with.
Right. But it seems like he's gotten to the point where it's like, it is what it is. It's probably worse if nobody's talking about you.
Yeah, no, it's probably true. He talks a lot about like the baseline of he talks about it in different respects, but let's just say like your dopamine baseline gets raised so high that certain things that would, give you a heart attack out of excitement for him are just like, whatever, I don't care. Right. And that's a tough spot to be in. And so the attention probably feels the same way. Like I think about that with super ultra famous people. It's like, if you go out and people don't scream your name in the streets, like what's wrong?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You're going to age out of that no matter who you are. That's got to be tough. That's why I'd way rather be rich than famous, like way rather be rich than famous.
Right. But money follows attention.
Yeah, I know. It does.
I know. Isn't that wild? Like in some way, but you can be the guy just puffing on the cigar in the boardroom, making decisions, let someone else get the attention.
Yeah. That takes a lot harder work though.
Yeah, it does. Especially, capitalism is great. But man, when the pharmaceutical companies and stuff get into the politician's pocket, it's no longer capitalism. It's like mafia, kind of.
Yeah, it is like mafia. Yeah. I've seen that documentary show Dirty Money. Have you watched any of that?
Yeah. I don't remember that one specifically, but I know I've watched, because that's all I watch.
Yeah, they've got like different episodes actually, but it's like a docu-series. So each episode is like a different case of dirty money. And like, yeah, the corruption that exists within big banks and big pharma and anything, I guess, that has big in front of it is ridiculous. But you know what? Like, there's no place on earth I'd rather be living or starting a business. So
for sure. It is. Right. Like, because most of the time they just leave the little guy alone,
Yeah.
Until you start like making waves, like Grant Cardone, he's probably starting to get some enemies.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he'll start winning those enemies over.
He will.
He will not. He's not going to quit. He's not going to just shy away.
I've never met a single person that changes the room as much as Grant when he walks in.
Really?
Never. Grant had like it sounds so dumb because I don't even fanboy over him, but like he walked in the room when I interviewed him the second time in person and everything changes. Not only does he make you feel like $1 million, but like the room looks better. The light shines brighter. Like there's something there. I don't know what it is, but there's like an aura. You can almost see it. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
That's like, it's kind of like you want to aspire to be that guy.
Yeah.
to like, not because you want the attention on you, but you just want to be, you have that level of certainty in your mission, why you're here, etc. That you, everywhere you go, you're just like, I know I'm here.
It is, yeah, it is crazy. But you're right about the capitalism thing. Like when you get to grant size, people start paying attention. But before that, all is good.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But he's gonna, he has a master plan. He's gonna cash out big one day for sure.
It's crazy to think that I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's crazy to think that he's like 63 or 64. And
Dude, he's taking something.
he looks good. He's got
Yeah.
insane energy. He's
Mhm.
got his wits about him, obviously. And I would say he's got at least another 10 years before we're going to notice any sort of like cognitive decline or energy decline. Like,
Yeah.
that guy's got something going on.
And he has the 10x health, whatever.
Craziness.
He's got some kind of shit. Stem cells every other day or something. I don't know.
Craziness.
Whatever it is, I'm getting up there. Come on, Grant. Holler at your boy. Give me some of that.
Now I haven't done stem cells, but my guess is that that'll become more commonplace. Because I went to a conference last year, Greg Reed's conference,
Mhm.
and there were people doing stem cells. There was a stem cell guy there.
Right.
Just like people running up to a hotel room, like getting injections, and oh, my body feels so bad the next day after. Like normal people that were just like, I'll try it. I was like, I'll try it, but the line was too long or whatever. There was no availability.
Yeah, Tony Robbins was talking about that with his new book. Maybe his team has already reached out to you.
No.
Oh, he has a book called Life Force, I think, where he's talking about how commonplace stem cells will be. Like it'll be like, go down to Walgreens, grab some stem cell drink or some shit, or like they're spraying people, burn victims with stem cells on their face, and they heal up in like a week.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know Dave Asprey. I've read a lot about stem cells through Dave and his books. And yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing technology. And I think you could heal almost anything with stem cells. That's the cool part.
Yeah. It's just like
local healing.
The original building block. It just turns into whatever you want, basically, or whatever your body signals. Hey, we need this. Yeah, that's pretty sweet. But there's two guys in the anti-aging area that just, people are like, they look young, but I feel like they look like dog shit in some ways. Dave, and who's that little guy that wrote Lifespan?
David Sinclair.
Yeah, I'm like, these guys look kind of old to me. I don't know, like they look young but old. It's weird.
Yeah, David Sinclair, I interviewed him for our podcast, and I will say that he looks younger than he actually is for sure. And with Dave experiments with so many different things that I don't think are necessary. Like he does hair transplants and fusions and like skin stuff. And like, whereas David Sinclair, I think just like eats differently, and takes a couple supplements.
Yeah.
Asprey has like a million things going on. So yeah,
Right.
I kind of look at Dave Asprey and think the same thing that you do. I'm like, what? Like too much.
Right. Yeah. So are you a big sauna guy? You do that kind of stuff?
Yeah, almost. I mean, it depends on where I am, but I like it so much that I actually bought an at-home little in-person sauna box. But
right.
When
Man,
I go
I was
to the
looking
gym,
at those.
I sit in it. Yeah.
Because when they locked us down here, I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to find a way to get a sauna. And then I was like looking at these little ones you can set up in your house, and like you cover
That's
everything.
The one that I had. Yeah.
But your head's sticking out,
Exactly.
Does it work, or like, what's that? What's it like?
Yeah. I had one that your head sticks out and your hands stick out. And so you can still like read or like be on your phone. And they're infrared saunas. So you can sit in them longer than you can like a dry sauna at a gym, because the heat is lower and the humidity is lower, but like your body sweats. And so I would sit in those for a half an hour to 45 minutes. Because when COVID started, I did the same thing. I said, I want to stay in the sauna. So I bought that. And yeah, they're gross though, because like, how do you clean them out? I don't know. I used mine like 30 times and then I just kind of like left it there and put it away and
Right.
didn't touch
Let
it again.
And then Rachel gets in it right after you, just like slips right in.
I mean, yes, that is kind of how it worked. It was pretty gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I was in the sauna as recently as yesterday, like last night.
Mhm.
Normally whenever I finish a workout, I sit in the sauna.
Yeah, me too. And I've been trying to have me and my wife have been trying to have kids. I'm like, damn, am I cooking my beans here? Like, what are
You
we
might
doing?
be. Rachel read me an article one day about that. She's like, did you know that prolonged exposure to like hot temperatures decreases your sperm count by XYZ? And I'm like, listen, we're not trying to have a kid. So when we are, I won't go in the sauna as much.
Right. Yeah. And the one time, so we had a early miscarriage, but the one time that we got pregnant, the sauna was closed. I was like,
I would
damn,
say you might want to stop going to the sauna.
I'm boiling the frog, you know?
Well, good for you. I hope that it works
Yeah.
out. I want to see some
Yeah.
little mics running around,
Right. That's what we need.
reading books, yelling at the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I graduated high school with a 1.9. If it wasn't for gym, it would have been 1.0. Like, I'm just not a good student. But now, isn't it funny that the pendulum swung all the way back? Like, now I'll take a subject and just like grind on it, and I don't even have to. I'll
Yeah.
just keep learning, make all these different connections.
That, I mean, my story more than most people, just like through consuming content and whatever. But I mean, a lot of people think that I was a good student too, and I was not a good student. I mean, like academically, I handled things pretty well, but
Mhm.
I didn't like school. I was like
Yeah.
a rebellious student.
Yeah.
I took AP calculus in high school, but I figured out that homework was only 10% of the grade and that I could get by without doing any homework. So I had a 0% homework average. I was like that kind of student,
Right. Yeah.
that didn't want to do the work, but like was capable of doing it. So
Yeah.
the thought of going back to school, like grad school or something, makes me
Mhm.
sick.
So tell me how your marketing studies have translated to the real world.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I market on BookThinkers all day long, but I give zero credit to my college studies. I'll tell you what happened with college. I went in socially awkward and I came out socially confident. And I took public speaking classes and I ran a house painting business with door-to-door sales. And I took a software internship where I was dialing all the time. And I
Mhm.
think that those three things, public speaking classes, painting internship, software internship, are what like changed 99% of what changed. And
Mhm.
I give almost 0% credit to my classes because I don't know. I was a bad college student too. Like I
Mhm.
had this one lecture style class where I figured where your attendance was the little clicker thingy. And
Oh.
and I figured out that if you connected the clicker and it buzzed every time there was a question, but if you connected it to campus Wi-Fi while you were in the dorms watching Netflix, it would still buzz. And the teacher let it slip that it wasn't about getting them right. It was just about attendance.
Right.
So, like I figured things out like that. I mean, but anyway, the marketing related stuff I think was mostly through like internships and then that one set of classes related to public speaking. And
Mhm.
that definitely helped out a lot.
Was there any macro lessons that you learned from some of those marketing classes that you still think about, or or is it better to think like the guy with the rock on the table, full circle, the guy you interviewed?
Yeah, Wayne, he's a really cool guy. I There's nothing that I still think about
Yeah.
consciously from college, but there are probably I wouldn't discount it to the point that I would say zero. Like there's definitely some subconscious stuff. The frameworks that allowed me to read these books and apply them were probably built during those college years. But I
Yeah.
mean, man, did I dislike it? I don't know.
Hmm. What's
Yeah.
made me better is that, so my full-time job right now is, and here's the thing, I am an entrepreneur, like at the core, right? But like, to make ends meet, I'm like, I'm going to take a 9 to 5. And then this family that I work for is so good to me, full autonomy. They haven't told me to do anything ever, never even asked what I've done ever. We meet once a month. but they've never said you can't work from home, you can't do what you want with your days. So I literally can't find a reason to leave. And I'm looking for one always. And but have you ever tried to market like a toilet?
No,
You'll
I
learn real
haven't.
quick how to it has to be about so that has taught me a lot about marketing. Like I need to stop thinking of plumbing, heating, and cooling and just think about what problems I can solve for homeowners. Period. So like I set up their email marketing and stuff. They've never done that, you know. And actually, when I ruptured my ACL, I was in the field learning how to be a HVAC installer because I was like, I'm sick of my wife calling my father-in-law every time something goes wrong. I'm like, I'm gonna learn how to do this shit myself because I'm like a kind of a work to learn kind of guy, you know.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to make a ton of money if I can learn a new skill, you know. So I'm doing that. Rupture my ACL playing basketball. I'm in the office because they're nice and they're like, we want you to keep working, make a paycheck, whatever. So I'm just like helping out with billing or warehouse stuff, and then they're mentioning marketing struggles and sales struggles and like these little problems. I'm like, oh, I think I have an idea if you don't mind me interjecting it, you know. And then I'm like, how often do you nurture your list? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, do you guys have email addresses? Like, yeah, we have 35,000 of them. I'm like, when's the last time you emailed them? Just say hello or here's some tips. Like, never. I'm like, never. I'm like, let's try it. Like, I know how to set up the software and do this, yada yada yada. Hit send, and the phone's just like constantly, hello, hello. And the service girls that answer the phone sent me a picture of a phone like on fire in my email. They're like, stop. I'm like, sorry. So now we have to like divide it into layers, like, okay, 10,000 people, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you want to like acquire a lead and do it like in every niche. If you learn how to market plumbing and heating, you can pretty much market anything besides your brother Mike, because I don't know how to market.
Besides my only brand, my
Right.
sole passion, what I dedicate all of my free time to. Well, my story is kind of similar though, because not that similar, because not toilets, but house painting. Like, it's not a super sexy thing to talk about, but
Yeah.
I was a college student with zero business experience, and I took a role with this company that would cover your workman's comp and stuff, and like set you up with this business in exchange for a percentage of revenue.
Yeah.
And I had to go door to door. I had to put like those picket signs at the entrance of neighborhoods that had my number and painting. I would drop off flyers. And I think the most important thing that I learned from doing that was just how marketing and impressions worked. The more impressions, the more times you get in front of somebody, the more likely they are to do business with you. And so I would, get an inbound lead from a neighborhood and somebody would want an estimate to do their house. And so we would start a painting job, and then I'd put lawn signs all over their lawn and lawn signs at the beginning of their neighborhood. And I would do 2 or 3 rounds of brochures in their mailbox. I would knock on every door after that. Now they've seen me like 10 times. Now I'm knocking on their door saying, hey, I noticed you need a little bit of work done or whatever. Right. I just did your neighbor down the street, John. Like, I would love to help you with this as well. And that's the most, that's how I started learning about marketing, was impressions and getting in front of people multiple times and trying to build relationships with your face.
Right.
And that kind of stuff.
It's so wild how important frequency is. I always took it for granted because I would like, when I was in sales, I just want to be the closer. I want to meet you right now and I want to do business right now, but the frequency just adds up. It's kind of like you're buying real estate in their mind because you just keep showing up, and then their Raz just starts seeing you everywhere.
Yeah.
And when they go to the Google machine, if I'm there for a local service ad, they're like, oh, I recognize that. Bing, so it's like, but it takes more patience.
You got to start applying it to the book space, man. Like, the first thing that I always do is invite authors to follow the page. Hey, if you're interested in doing business with me, consume some content between now and our call, follow the page, get into the comment section, check it out, see how the captions are structured, and then if they follow you, they start getting impressions. By the time you're on that call, they've seen you a little bit, all those types of things work really well.
Mm-hmm. Who's the best marketer that you know personally? If you can't pick yourself.
On Instagram or just in general?
Yeah, I guess Instagram.
I think of like marketing in terms of branding. When you ask me questions like that and I go, who's the best at branding? And I'd have to say it's got to be somebody like a Grant. He's in every business, doing everything all the time. He's always in your face. You get ads for his courses. Like I used to think of Ty Lopez as that guy, because every time I went on YouTube, I'd get an ad like here in my garage, So I think I think of guys like that, Ty Lopez, Grant Cardone. And there's an important lesson with Ty Lopez, because a lot of people hate Ty Lopez for some reason. Right. And I always say, listen, you don't have to like him to respect the fact that he's one of the best online marketers out there, or at least he was for a while.
Or
you don't
acknowledge
have to
that
like
you're
Grant. Yeah.
Right. Or acknowledge that you're talking about them right now and they're taking energy in your space, in your mind.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's this guy here in Minnesota that is on every billboard. He's everywhere, but he's kind of cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I'm in a marketing meeting, they're like, oh, Chris Lindahl. Like, because he goes like this on his billboards. It's just him. I want to be your real estate agent, whatever. And he's everywhere. Like I can go from Minneapolis to Canada and I'll see him every couple miles minimum, but there's like a whole website that says like Chris Lindahl slept with my wife or something. So it's like,
so he probably set it up.
Genius, I guess.
I mean, like Donald Trump too. I think he's one of the best marketers we've ever seen. Why?
How dare you?
Why? Because he was talked about by his enemies more than anybody in history.
Still,
that's marketing.
Still, you turn on any station, they're like, well, Trump, blah, 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 blah. Trump. Still to this day.
You talked about like the default neural connections before with bad habits or like anger or whatever we were talking about. Like if the default for any subject in any local population is you, like that's marketing. If somebody thinks, I want to market my book, BookThinkers, like that's the goal. And if somebody thinks politician and Donald Trump pops up, he's winning, because there are bazillions of politicians and there have been a lot of presidents.
Right. Yeah. What's funny? When I first came across your account, I think you made a comment, you're out there hustling. You made a comment on like some shitty post that I made, had a book. Nobody gave it attention at all. I had like 400 followers or some shit. And it was just my friends and family. And you're like, oh, you hype me up. You're like, and I'm like, BookThinkers. I mean, what fucking kind of dumb name is that? Like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, BookThinkers. I'm like, that's the dumbest name ever. And now anytime I say BookThinkers, Erica, my wife, knows exactly who I'm talking about. Yeah. Nick. And my wife's trying to calm me down a little bit, because I'm like, I'm gonna fucking go on Instagram right now and just tell these people what's up. No, Mike, no, don't do it.
Well, I like that you tell your Instagram audience, hey, my wife told me not to say this, but, and then you tell everybody.
Yeah. Dude, tell me about Rachel.
Oh, she's awesome.
How'd you meet her?
So I met Rachel on a New Year's Eve, like 5 years ago. And a couple of my buddies were like talking to her and her friend, and eventually I interjected and ended up, she was my New Year's kiss that night. Oh. And it was at like a club in Boston. Right. But we went our separate ways after that and didn't really like follow up or connect. And then about 2 years and 2 months after that, because it was a February day, I think, I just got a friend request on Facebook from Rachel. And then I didn't respond to it fast enough. And then I got a message from Rachel that was like, hey, you came up in my people you may know section of Facebook, blah, 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 blah. It's been so long. What's going on? And so I remember I screenshotted it and I sent it to one of my friends, and I'm like, how do these people find me? That's what I said. And then
Yeah.
and then and then I ended up asking her, like we were trading some messages. I asked her for a number. I said, hey, I'd like to, I'm free Friday. Are you free Friday? So I took her
Mhm.
out to dinner, and the rest is history. So that
Right.
was that was about 3 years ago, 2 years and 11 months ago now that we
Mhm.
got dinner. And so we've been together for about 3 years, and yeah, she's awesome.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What's their best quality? How does she make you better? Because I know my wife, even though I don't like to admit it, I'm like, damn, this woman's making me better. You know?
Yeah. I would say in the same way that I'm logical as like a positive thing, she's emotional as a positive thing. And so it's a great balance because it gives me a window into the things that I don't normally access or like have a hard time describing. And I
Right.
would, that's the best counterbalance
Mhm.
aspect to her.
Yeah, my wife, I'll be like pouring a cup of coffee in, and I look over and she's crying. I'm like what just happened? Like what just happened? She's like, you just don't understand. Like, just enter into. I'm like, I don't know what we're entering into. Like, what are we doing here? So my wife has definitely pushed me to like try to be more empathetic, right? Like,
I would say that's the word that I would normally use too, is
mhm,
like sympathy versus empathy. I might use like she's more sympathetic than I am,
yeah,
but yeah, empathy. Those are learned skills, by the way.
right.
That's something that I've definitely improved over time.
Hmm.
So that's what she brings to the table for sure. That's how she makes me better.
Hmm.
At least that's like the number one way.
Right. That's good. It's weird that a man can be better because you got a woman back behind the scenes kind of pushing you. So I met my wife online. This place called Plenty of Fish. You ever heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Okay. It was before Tinder. Thank God Tinder wasn't around when I was single and stupid. But so we started talking on there, we started texting, and I grew up, wild, and she grew up like pretty stable, nice Christian home, etc. So she'd always be talking about my faith, my this, this is so important to me, and everything was like so nice. I'm just like, there's no way that this woman is going to accept my family. My mom was out there smoking crack. I'm like, there's no way. Like, she's just too nice. So I quit talking to her. And
Hmm.
then like 3 weeks later, she sends me a text. You're an asshole. I'm like, yeah, I know. Why you say that? Like, we're on the same page. And she's like, because you just stopped talking to me. I'm like, okay. I'm like, wow, this is, she has a little fight in her underneath all that softness. She's like, I'm not going to force you to hang out with me, blah, blah, blah. So at least tell me why we're not talking anymore so I can move on. I'm like, you want to hang out tomorrow? And then we had a great first date. And I was like so pissed off at that point because there was like this chick I had a crush on. She just like ghosted me basically because of my family and like all the
Yeah.
craziness. And so when I met her, I just gave it all to her. I'm like, my mom's probably smoking crack right now. My brother's probably cutting off your Cadillac converter when it's in the driveway. Like, I've been to jail. I got problems. And she's like, okay, but you seem like you want to improve. I'm like, oh, for sure. And I'm like, I knew I was gonna marry her right away.
How long did it take until you guys got married? Or
Uh,
I guess when did you propose and then when did you guys get married?
I think 2 years, and then as soon as I proposed, we got married. We had a real small wedding because half my family,
Yeah.
it's not there. So we had a real small wedding, like maybe 7 months later, 8 months later. Um, but we had some definitely rocky parts after that. Just like trying to weasel my way out of relationships. I'm like, I want to go live in a van, type thing. But you know, I used to think like the Playboys were like alpha males, like, yeah, just all these options, anytime you want, you can just go from woman to woman to woman. And now I think I'm like, dude, what kind of pussy can't commit to something? Right? I'm like, it's much more manly to like have options and like girls like trying to convince you to be a douchebag and like go cheat or whatever. We're just like, no, I'm committed to the mission. And my marriage is part of that. So like that's manly. It took a while to learn that, but
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So if you grew up on this side of the spectrum, I grew up on not like all the way over here, but like,
right.
somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
And so my parents are great. They've always been great. I've never really seen them fight. I just grew up in sort of like the white picket fence household. And so that gave me, like, I understood what you were talking about right now, just a little bit earlier, because that's what I saw growing up. I saw that dynamic exist, and my dad and my mom be really happy about it. So that's always what I wanted, and that's always what I expected. So like for me, I've never cheated on a girlfriend. It's just, despite attention or whatever, it's never even been a thought. It's like I know what a successful relationship looks like and how the guy is supposed to act. And I've just always been like that.
Yeah, isn't that funny that the default gets programmed into you just by your environment?
It does, yeah. And I'm happy that I didn't have to overhaul my default, and that's what makes me understand that situations like yours.
Right. Like there was times, not to be too graphic and like not to bring this back in my memory, but there'd be times where I'd come home from school and then I'd walk in and my mom is bent over the coffee table with some guy she met 10 minutes ago. I'm like, whoa, all right, I'm out of here. Just like, dude, wild life.
Yeah.
It's just like, so I had to overcome like that instant validation of like sexual attention, like any girl that wanted to sleep with me. I'm like, oh, you want to sleep with me? I'm good enough. Kind of like almost like a feminine thing. Like,
yeah.
Like, oh, you're pursuing me? Like, and this is, I think, why my dad probably got murdered, like sleeping with married women. I think that had a lot to do with it because he was just like just a man whore, and so like if a married woman gives you attention, that's even better because it's like double, so it's just like overcoming all that shit's been a long road, dude.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, I'm a judgmental person in terms of like, if people aren't willing to improve. But you just said the thing about you and your wife. It's like, she just said, yeah, but looks like you're trying to improve. Right. And so my judgment is applied to people that aren't trying to improve. But, I'm very conscious of situations like that. Because when you grow up on the other side of the spectrum, there's an insecurity of like, did I have it too nice?
All right. You start getting that white guilt.
Yeah, exactly.
That white guilt fits right into that niche. Like,
what I'm super excited about is Jordan Peterson. I listened to he just put out a 4-hour and 15-minute podcast with Rogan last week.
Yeah.
And I listened. Yeah. And there's a part he talked about, like the book project he's working on is addressing guilt. Like, I don't remember how he framed the guilt, but he's talking about like white guilt or, however he phrased it. And I'm excited to read that because it's something that I've thought a lot about.
Yeah. The book title was Those Who Wrestle with God, I think.
Yeah. I'm excited for it.
Like the archetype of Christ. So like, I think when he explained the Christ story and he's like, and your best friend betrayed you. And, towards the end, I'm like, holy fuck. Like Christ was like the alpha of alphas. He's just like, yeah, bitch, I'm perfect. And watch me carry this cross. And I'm over here like complaining about like the weather's bad. They won't let me out of my house. I'm just like, what a pussy.
Yeah.
Christ just took it all and just kept on rolling.
Has any of Erica's religion like rubbed off on you?
Oh yeah. So right around the time I met her, I was like super into quantum physics and like The Secret and like all these different things. But I accidentally hired 2 sales managers that were youth pastors. So I'm like, hey, look at this. Like time, space, and matter, they all come together. And he's like, bro, that's in the Bible. Come check this out. And I'm like, what? I'm like, explain it. I'm like, how the hell does that mean that? And then we just kept like going back and forth, and I was his boss, but he was like helping me and I'm helping him in his career. It was cool. So I became a Christian really probably around the time I met her, but I just wasn't all in. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I go back and forth, not like between atheist and Christian, but like I go back and forth with like God, like, wow. And then I'm like, maybe it's the archetype of Christ that I'm really attracted to. Like that model of like courage, self-sacrifice, doing what's right, even though you're gonna get put up, strung up on the cross. Like and what kind of balls it took to just go around and be like, hey, I'm God. Like, could you imagine if like someone rolled up to you and like, hey, I'm God? I'm like, what the fuck? Get the hell out of here, you crazy ass. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I do. I think a lot about religion. I grew up Catholic and went to church every Sunday. And then still, even as like moving away from home and going to college, I still went to church on Sundays.
yeah.
I'm like one of the only kids going to church after a night of partying, atoning for my sins the night before. And like, and I still pray every night and most mornings. And I have 3 or 4 religious tattoos, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 religious tattoos. And like, I'm very in touch with that stuff. And the battle that I've had more recently is more of like prioritizing the relationship to God more so than the relationship to the religion.
Right. The structure versus like,
yeah,
talking to God whenever you like he's your boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I lean towards that, talking to him like he's your boy side of it, because there's a lot of bad players in the structure piece.
Here's the thing, dude. Whenever you get humans involved in something,
yeah,
you got that one fuckhead that's just a creep, or just like even those pastors that are like super popular, they're just good at marketing.
I know.
I'm like, you're a marketer. You're just in the wrong business. Come on. Like, so yeah, me and dude, I argue a lot with God. Mostly our conversations is like, am I doing, like, just give me the manual so I can get to work. Like, I'll execute your plan. Just give me the plan so I can get to work, instead of like trying to figure out, am I going the right direction? Come on, give me a sign, or like guide me. Am I going the right way?
Yeah.
I just want a map.
In McConaughey. So I mean, I listened to Green Lights. I don't know if he talks about it in Green Lights, but in a podcast conversation that he either had with Rogan or Tim Ferriss, he talked about the Jesus archetype. And he talked about like Jesus lived a life where what made him happy, like what he truly desired to do every single day, was also the greatest for the common good. So not only like was he fulfilling himself, but he was fulfilling other people. And like, that's the ultimate, I forget what he called it, but he's like, that's the ultimate state of being. That's Christ-like, like the Kanye lyric, Christ-like, like that's what it is what makes you happy is also good for the common good. And I also think about that a lot too. It's like, I'm genuinely happy helping other people make progress by introducing them to personal development books. And I'm genuinely like, I know that that's helping people, because if you're reading these books and trying to be a better person, you're not doing, you're rethinking bad decisions, you're becoming better. So that's kind of like my late 20s attempt at it anyway.
Yeah, it's a constant battle, but I think as long as you're seeking, it's all going to work out. Like, let me tell you a story real quick, and I'll let you go. I know we're really cranking on the minutes here.
No worries.
So I did a 23andMe, spit into a tube, because I was curious. Health markers. I've been knocked unconscious on the football field, like, I don't know, a dozen times at least. There's been one time where I was like, so I was a kick returner, but so we had 2 deep guys, and whoever didn't get the ball was the lead blocker, right? So this time I didn't get the ball, and I went flying, and I was just a psychopath, just angry kid. And I hit this kid, and I wake up, and I'm on top of him, and like our snot is on each other. And I get up, and I went to the wrong sideline, sat down on the bench. Like, I was just completely, and this is early 2000s. So like, if you got everything's got your oh, you got your bell rung. Like, no,
Can I
actually
tell
I
you a
was
quick story
yeah, go ahead.
to interject? I have the
Yeah.
same story almost, but from the other perspective. So as a sophomore, I got a shot on varsity special teams, the punt
Right.
team. We had a good
Uh-huh.
football team.
Yeah.
So I was on punt team and we're getting our butts kicked. I'm talking like we might have been down 35-0 or something. And the kid on the punt return team that I lined up against, I was on the line for whatever reason.
Right. Yeah.
He was like a grown man with a full beard and just kind of like let me by. So I'm
Right.
flying down the field. I don't get blocked by anybody. Helmet to
no.
helmet. I hit I bounce off actually one blocker, helmet to helmet, and then I fly into the kid returning the ball and like clean his clock. And I don't remember anything. I just remember I'm on the sideline, everybody's patting my helmet, and we go and we watch the film. And I leveled this kid, got up, celebrated, whatever, and I had no memory of any of it. So funny that it was both on punt stuff, but like that's one of my kind of funny concussion stories. But I'll go back to you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I've had a ton of experiences like this. And I spit in the tube. I'm like, let me see if I have the precursor or the genetic propensity for Alzheimer's, dementia, etc. Plus all these concussions. I better like try to get a step ahead of it.
I did the same thing too.
Oh, you did? Okay, gotcha. And then I ran it through. So I do have like all the genes that might turn me into drooling in my mashed potatoes, but sauna is huge with that fasting, you know. But I do this, and then I run it through DNA Fit. You ever heard of that company?
No.
So you can take your raw data from 23andMe or whatever one you used, and you can put it through DNAfit.com, I think it's called, and it tells you like what your genes handle as far as like carbohydrates, what kind of diet might be best for you, how many proteins you have for fast twitch versus slow twitch, etc. And it was like 68% fast twitch. I was like, okay, that makes sense why I was so trainable. Like, you know, like I would get fast very easily compared to most people. And so I just went down the nerd rabbit hole. But then bringing it back to God, I found out that I have a random uncle that lives like an hour from me. And I was trying to figure, I was about to become an electrician, join the union, and etc. Thank God I didn't. But he was in HVAC and plumbing. He's like, come look at the shop tour. And now I have like a 9 to 5 that I absolutely love from spitting in a tube. And I'm still arguing with God, like, you know, like, I think the path is like kind of being set for me in a weird way, but I always want to do my own thing. So I'm like, you know, that's where that battle comes, where I'm just constantly bitching at God. I'm like, come on, man, give me a map here.
Yeah, it reminds me of that story of like the office guys driving into work. He's super late. He's like, please, God, just open up a parking spot. One opens up. He goes, never mind, found one. So
exactly,
you're like that guy. You're like, please show me the path. And then your 23andMe is like, here's a job which you would never expect. And you're like, never mind.
Right. Yeah. Here's an uncle. And it's like the closest relationship I have with family on that side is him now.
Yeah. It's crazy to think about.
All this stuff's here.
Yeah. I did 23andMe and Ancestry. I don't know why, but I did both of them. Data is pretty similar. And anyway, thankfully, I don't have the predispositions for that stuff, but I've seen it in my family. So I'm conscious of it. Right. I'd rather know than not know for sure. And I'd recommend that for anybody that made it an hour and a half into our conversation. Right. You know, it's worth knowing. Because then like you can go work in the sauna and fast and minimize inflammation and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff. So Nick, it was good to connect with you, man.
Yeah, it was a good conversation.
We've never had a face-to-face conversation like that besides like through the DMs or, you know, whatever. I did a short podcast with Ryan one time, but we should do it again.
Dude, I'm available for things like this. I like it, especially on weekends, because I've got so much free time now, really working on time management. But anyway, I had a good conversation and I can't wait until we meet up and race or do something. You got to heal up.
Dude, if we ever have a conference, I have to be invited.
so I'm starting to like, I know that we're over our time a lot now, but I'm starting to really like plant the seeds for some type of in-person event that I want to host, because I saw how Greg Reed did it, and it was like the most amazing experience. And all he did was moderate. And I think I could set something up where a bunch of these authors show up, a bunch of people from the community show up. Maybe it's somewhere fun and exotic, but close, like a Cancun or whatever.
Mhm.
And people just talk personal development for a couple days and meet each other. Like, how cool would that be?
That'd be great, dude. It'd be great because you've built up this community that everybody kind of knows each other, or they're aware of each other. But then to finally meet in person, like even meeting those few people I met, like we had some of the most epic conversations, and like you get to know them a lot better because maybe they're like more passive on Instagram and you're the loud one or whatever.
Faceless.
Right. I know, man. It
We
drives
won't
me
go down
nuts.
that rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
exactly. Yeah. We won't. But yeah, I think you should do that.
Yeah. All right, man. Well,
Yeah.
until next time.
Yeah. Until next time.